Wow, it is unbelievably hot out here. And to think, right now, we're spending all of our time covering all-star tournaments where kids are playing twice a day, 3 or 4 days in a row, and we're getting ready for football season. This can't be very good for the kids. Let's go over to Children's Healthcare and talk with Dr. David Marshall and find out what we can do to help make sure our kids are safe in these conditions. Well, we're getting into the heat of summer, and this is when football camps across the country start gearing up. And it's about this time every year that we see the newspaper articles start to pop up about kids who die from heat illness. Well, why are so many kids suffering from heat exhaustion when there's so much information to be found about hydration? We're going to address some of those topics today and find out what we can do to make our kids safer with friend of the show and Director of Sports Medicine here at Children's Healthcare of Atlanta, Dr. David Marshall. Doc, thanks once again.
Thank you for having me.
So, simply, what can football coaches, that's what we're talking about right now, I guess it goes for any sport, but football coaches in general, what can they do to make sure their kids are safe?
Well, with any ailment in sports, whether it's knee injuries or concussions or heat illness, which is what we're going to talk about, it's education. The coaches, the trainers, if they're present, the kids and the parents need to be educated on things that you can do, not just to recognize and treat heat illness, but also to prevent it from happening.
All right, so the first thing I would guess is knowing when to practice?
Yeah, that's a good point. Here in the South, it gets pretty hot, and there's recommendations and guidelines as to how to alter your practice based on the heat index. And the heat index is a measure of relative humidity and ambient temperature. For example, if it's 85 degrees outside with a relative humidity of 90%, then the heat index might be well into the upper 90s or low hundreds. And there's charts that are available readily that give the heat index. Really, all you need to do is be able to measure the relative humidity, which can be obtained on the web, and just have a thermometer then.
All right, so you've got the relative humidity. You've got the temperature on your chart. You know whether it's safe to practice. You've decided we can go practice today. Right. What do you do next to make sure your kids are hydrated?
Well, when it's deemed safe for the kids to go out on the field, then you need to decide whether you should alter your practices to accommodate the heat. For example, there's different zones in the heat chart. There's the yellow zone, which is where, you might need to have a little more frequent water breaks. Maybe every 15 to 20 minutes of exercise, the kids need to take a break, go find a shaded area, and be required to drink. Oftentimes, the kids should be required to take their helmets and shoulder pads off to increase that evaporative cooling, which is the most efficient way to cool our bodies during exercise. Then there's other zones, which is the orange zone, which you can see on the chart, where the kids might need to be required to practice indoors, or they might require to be practiced in t-shirts and shorts and not be allowed to put that gear on. Because really, a full football equipment is going to cover 60% of your total body area, which really decreases your body's ability to cool itself through sweating and evaporation.
Would you suggest football coaches, because we tend to be kind of in a zone where in practice, designate one person on the field to keep time, decide this is when we need a break? That's a
great point. If they're fortunate enough to have an athletic trainer at the practice, then that's the athletic trainer's job, is to make sure that those policies are followed. However, the youth sports and even our Pee-wee leagues don't have the luxury of an athletic trainer. So you're right. So one of the coaches, whether it's the head coach or preferably an assistant coach, be the one to watch the clock, to blow the whistle and say, hey guys, mandatory water break. Another thing to think about is the game time, that there's really no reason why a referee can't have scheduled TV timeouts for water breaks or soccer matches. Why can't we divide a soccer game on a Saturday afternoon into 4 quarters rather than 2 halves? So there should be built-in breaks required by the officials to have water breaks.
All right, so you've decided whether or not it's safe to practice. You've built in water breaks at appropriate intervals and decided what kind of equipment to wear and how to do practice.
Right.
Is there anything else you can do as a coach?
Well, there's a lot of things they can do, and this is the preparation phase. They need to make sure that they have an identifiable shaded area. If they practice near a big tree, identify some big tree as the place where the kids go if they're suffering a heat illness or just during breaks. If you don't have access to a tree or shaded area, then you might need to purchase one of those big 10 by 10 or 12 by 12 pop-up tents and set that up for every practice. That can be very helpful. I like the kids to employ what's called the buddy system. So every kid has a buddy on their team that they kind of watch over. That way you don't have to rely on a coach to notice if a kid's starting to really sweat, starting to get lightheaded, just not acting right. That every player, every couple minutes or every huddle, you identify your buddy, you make eye contact, give yourself a head nod, make sure you're okay. And I think that can be a very helpful tool in early identification of a kid who might be getting into trouble.
It's a lot of great information as usual, and I'll just close with this thought. A lot of times I think that we underestimate what kids are capable of, especially mentally, and what they can handle. And when we talk about education, people automatically think educating the coaches and educating the parents. But with this buddy system, you're saying educate the kids and make the kids aware of how important hydration is.
Take care of each other.
All right, Doc.
It's a team sport.
We appreciate it, buddy.
Thank you.
This is a team here. Dr. Marshall, Casey Bass. This is Clubhouse Gas. We'll see you right back here next time for another great edition.